The one-drop rule is racist, plain and simple. And if you already believe that it is racist, then let me tell you, it is a lot worse than you think. So for those of you who don't know, the one-drop rule was essentially a law in America that basically said if you had even one ancestor who was African or of African descent, then you were black. If you had one drop of black blood, they said, then you were black. If you could dribble a ball, you were black. If you could play the saxophone, you're black. And I mean, you may think that's funny, but some people actually take it that far. So although the one-drop rule was a formal law at one point, it eventually got repealed, but for some odd reason, it persisted. It just kept going. And the one-drop rule was essentially created by white supremacists who wanted to maintain the purity of the white races. And the odd thing about that is that now the one-drop rule is actually enforced more by so-called black anti-racist. So it's a little strange that you had white supremacists of the past enforcing this rule, and now we have so-called anti-racists enforcing it. It's almost as if these two groups have pretty similar views, and they both hate mulattoes. So the one-drop rule is an example of hypo-descent. Hypo-descent is essentially this idea that if you are mixed race, you have to identify with the race that is perceived to be lower on the racial hierarchy. To give an example, if you're black and Asian, you have to identify as black. You have no choice. If you're white and Asian, white in air quotes, white and Asian, then you have to identify as Asian. You can't identify as white with them eyes. Wow. So I'm going to give y'all an example of just how extreme the one-drop rule is in America. So shout out to 50 Gray Shades on TikTok. He sent me this article. We got a good group of mulattoes over there on TikTok. So go over there, give everybody a follow, give 50 Gray Shades a follow, and just join the club. So this article is from the Harvard Gazette and it's entitled "One-Drop Rule Persists." So we're going to just read one paragraph here, and then it's this one here. It says, in the United States, the one-drop rule, also known as hypo-descent, dates to a 1662 Virginia law on the treatment of mixed-race individuals. The legal notion of hypo-descent has been upheld as recently as 1985. So basically, when the Terminator and Freddy Krueger were rampaging, people were enforcing the one-drop rule. When a Louisiana court ruled that a woman with a black great-great-great-great-grandmother could not identify herself as white on her passport. So this is, I don't know if this is like a singular extreme example or if it was always this extreme, but we at least now have some evidence that it could get this extreme. It did at some point get this extreme. And again, 1985. Like Bowling for Soup didn't mention this in their song. 1985. You know how like freaking whites presenting, white passing this woman had to have been? And they were still like, no, you cannot identify as white. And this is the rule that many black people, remember the oppressed class, want to enforce. They looked back in time at the white supremacists and were like, hey, we're gonna copy that. So now that we have a good understanding of the one-drop rule and just how extreme it can be, we can now see why it would have been very appealing to racist white eugenicists. You can see very clearly why they would love this. If you're a eugenicist, you believe certain genetics are superior to others, and you want to take action to preserve those superior genetics. You want the government to step in and take action and also preventing those with inferior genetics from reproducing. So you would think that the one-drop rule for eugenicists would be a step in the right direction. Well, you'd be wrong, because for some eugenicists, the one-drop rule was actually a step too far. Let's go back in time. The year is 1935, and Germany has a new chancellor, and boy does he have a sick mustache. His government implements the Nuremberg laws. These were a collection of laws that did various different things, but in one of these laws, there was a section where they defined racial categories in Germany and the privileges afforded to those racial categories. So we're now going to read a few paragraphs from this law. This specific one is called the Reich Citizenship Law. I was really trying to get that R, that like, you gotta like roll that German R like way back in the throat. Reich, the Reich Citizenship Law of September 15th, 1935. The day before Mexican Independence Day. So we're gonna scroll down, section 5 here. So again, this is the Germans prior to World War II stating racial categories. A is anyone who descended from at least 3 grandparents who were fully by race. Part 2, a is also anyone who descended from 2 fully grandparents. So let me read that first one again. A is anyone who descended from at least 3 grandparents who were fully by race. So literally in 1930s Germany, if you had only one ancestor, you weren't considered, and in fact, in many cases, you were considered a Mischlinge. So if we move up, it says the regulations in, I guess, section 1, squiggly S1, are also valid for Reich subjects of mixed blood, Mischlinge. An individual of mixed blood is one who is descended from 1 or 2 grandparents who were fully by race, insofar as he or she does not count as a according to squiggly S5, paragraph 2. So I'm not too concerned about how these people defined these categories, but one of the things we need to point out here is that they recognized a difference. They were the J's, okay, and then there were the Mischlinge. Okay, they recognized a difference, and merely having one J ancestor didn't make you a J. They recognized that there was a difference between mixed race people and, let's say, for lack of a better term, full-blooded monoracial people. And there are other instances where the Germans defined what they believed to be an Aryan. I don't believe it was ever in law. It was kind of more informal, their definition of what an Aryan was. But it was essentially someone who had 4 Aryan grandparents. Now, putting aside the fact that that's a circular definition, like you can't use the word Aryan in the definition of the word Aryan. So saying an Aryan is someone with 4 Aryan grandparents, okay, but then how do you know that the grandparents are Aryan? It's a circular definition. And I hear a lot of people using this with the definition of black, like they say black is someone with 2 black parents. That's a circular definition. How do you define black parent? But that rant aside, in 1930s Germany, you could have a J ancestor and still be considered Aryan and still get all the privileges, all the rights afforded to Aryans within Germany. And contrast that with the one-drop rule, where a woman literally could not identify as white because her great-great-great-great-grandmother was black. So what we're revealing here today is that the one-drop rule is literally the Nuremberg laws on steroids, okay? So anytime someone comes trying to enforce the one-drop rule on you, you need to point this out to them. They are literally worse than the Germans of World War II. And that is just absolutely damning. If you are enforcing a rule that literally was more extreme than German race laws in World War II, then you are contributing to the problem of racism, not stopping it. That's it for this video. If you liked what you heard, like, share, and subscribe to the channel. The channel you're on right now is for my long form content. You can also go subscribe to my other channel at Mongrel Uprising, which has a lot of my short form content. So I'm out.